Last Epoch. I've been playing it a lot for the past couple of weeks as it launched in patch 1.0 officially. It's been available in beta form for a very long time. There's been a lot of hype built up around this game, but I typically stick in my lane and I play the same game over and over, but finally decided to try this game on its official launch, blind in fact, because the timing just lined up really well with the Path of Exile down season. So that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. This is my official review of Last Epoch. So if you're new to the channel, welcome. My name's Snoo. I love ARPG games, especially the Diablo franchise, Path of Exile as well. Those are a couple of games I've played an enormous amount, sunk enormous amount of hours into. And my review is going to be through the context of comparing those games, because I feel like that's how I can bring the most value in this video to you probably. I feel like Last Epoch is a game that's begging to be part of that conversation of, which game is truly the GOAT of the ARPG genre. Obviously, it's going to evolve over time, but it's going to be very interesting because I think Last Epoch is, without a doubt, a terrific game. But I also think it's missing something. It's missing something very important, very core to any game that would ever hope to truly capture the imagination of a player base of, for a long period of time, to the point where years after the fact, you still have these very specific fond memories of the game. I'm not sure this game is setting itself up well to do that. We'll talk about a little bit more about what I mean, and especially how, the other games that I've played have done that in the past. I'll get into the more nuts and bolts of the review, of course. The campaign, we'll talk about that. Combat, moment-to-moment combat, very important in an ARPG. Crafting is usually important, depending on the game, but it is in this one for sure. Trade, solo, self-found. This game has an interesting take on that dilemma that feels like it's been a growing dilemma in the genre for quite some time. The endgame, I care about it very deeply. I've made it to the endgame, and that's thus why I'm coming out with this video now finally. And so we'll talk about how I feel on that, and we'll just wrap things up from there. So what do I mean when I say the game is terrific, but it's still missing something? Well, I always got the sense as I was playing this game that it seemed like almost every design decision that was made was inspired by either Path of Exile or Diablo, trying to take the best of which both have to offer and split it right down the middle. Now, this isn't too controversial. I've heard this from many other people reviewing the game. They feel like Last Epoch sits right in between the more hardcore player base of the PoE enjoyers and the more casual player base of the Diablo enjoyers. So if you are somebody who feels like you're somewhere right in between there, like PoE is just a little bit too complicated and hardcore for you, Diablo is a little bit too mundane and easy mode for you, Last Epoch might fit that really well. But my issue with that isn't where it sits on that spectrum. It's the fact that it just doesn't seem to have anything that's truly breathtaking, truly novel about it. It just seems to consist of a whole lot of great common sense solutions to some problems people have had in the past. Problems like opening up a skill tree and then seeing an enormous spider web of infinite skill points that you can go out. Or, the issue of trying to see what's in everyone else's stash tabs while you're looking at your own. That could be a problem too. But anyway, every single thing about this game just feels like it's taken so much inspiration, trying to take the best of what the other games have to offer. I can't really speak for things like Torchlight, Grim Dawn. I haven't played those. But at any rate, it just feels like it was made in a lab almost. Like it was made by a group of scientists, not actual artistic, creative game designers so much. Don't get me wrong. There's absolutely some artistry here. There is, but it seems overwhelmingly obvious to me that this game was conceived and taken on a very methodical conception point. I would like to think that if developers were to create a game, the brainstorming session at the very beginning, it would start with a conversation around a brand new novel idea to bring to the player base, something they'd never seen before, something they'd never thought about, rather than just creating the same thing over again and just making a moderately better iteration of that. Now, that's fine. A lot of games exist to do that. Phone games exist to do that. It just exists to make money. But I think this game is begging to be part of the conversation for one of the best games ever. I feel like too much there's too much of a good thing here to not consider the possibility that this game could or should have something truly amazing and novel and breathtaking about it. For Diablo 2, it was the gameplay loop, the itemization, the storyline, the gore. It was a lot of things. I don't have to talk about what made Diablo 2 that for you guys. You guys already know that probably. Diablo 3, a little bit of a mixed bag. The devs made an incredible risk on that one, making Inferno mode the top end level so hard that virtually anyone could get into it. It was obviously received mixedly, but it left an impression on the player base, captured the imagination of a lot of players, put a very high ceiling. You guys might remember in Diablo 3 had amazing combat gameplay for its time. Breathtaking, blew people's minds at that time. I know it's kind of hard to remember these things well after the fact. Diablo 4 is more recent. Also took some major risks. They're making I guess you would call it MMORPG, basically, out of that. Didn't pan out for a lot of people, but I appreciate the risks they took. I also appreciate the enormous amount of sound quality design in the campaign. I like the campaign a lot better than a lot of people. Obviously, that game had really major issues with Endgame, but I gotta hand it to him. Diablo 4 was still an incredible game for the first 20 or 30 hours into it, I felt. Path of Exile, that's where most of my audience lies. Don't think I need to talk too long about what makes Path of Exile capture the imagination. So much build diversity. The dev team that will seemingly never stop innovating in the core game and creating all kinds of brand new systems that compound on top of each other. It can get bloated, but it's obviously amazing for those who are keeping up with it, following along with it. And we'll see what PoE 2 comes to be. But anyway, back to Last Epoch. I think it's just got a lot of great systems, a lot of great common sense solutions. But I don't see any real novelty, real ingenuity here. I just see a lot of great, things. Let's take this. Actually, it would be cool if we did that, but we actually did it this way instead. I think people would like that. I just felt like that was a conversation that took place in the drawing board room in the beginning. And that's basically almost all there was to it. So maybe you agree, maybe you disagree. But that's what I mean. The soul of a game. We need to find the soul of a game. And right now, I don't see it. I hope they innovate. I hope that it comes to pass over time. And for that reason, I'm very much looking forward to Last Epoch as it progresses. I assume it will in respect to seasons or leagues or what have you. So let's move on. Let's talk about the campaign a little bit. Now, obviously, it's a small studio, and a small studio is going to suffer for its development of a campaign. It's not going to be able to hire a ton of amazing voice actors, not going to be able to draw up amazing Blizzard North-esque cinematics. The storyline may or may not be good, might have some issues. This game absolutely suffers. It's definitely one of the low points of the game. It's got some time travel things, which could be interesting for world building, but I never once really got into the world building. I honestly tried, but I eventually found myself just kind of skipping through the dialogues, didn't care. And I didn't care about racing, by the way. It was just a blind playthrough. I wanted to actually enjoy the game thoroughly. I don't know what happened in the campaign. That's not the end of the world. Campaign's not actually the most important thing in the game, not for me especially as an endgame enjoyer. But it does matter. Many smart people would say the campaign matters more than anything. Depends on who you are, but yeah, I got lost in the different times. Anytime you have a campaign with time travel, it's just going to be almost impossible to follow anyway. So it suffers a lot. I wish the time travel would have actually stayed consistent, a little more consistent. Like Act 1 is in this time, Act 2 is in this time, Act 3 is in this time. That would have at least been a little easier to follow. I did like the obvious extra effort that went into a few of the bosses. The endgame bosses, the bosses in the campaign were quite interesting. I felt like they were pretty good. The actual boss fights. But the story, I can't say all that many good things about it. Let's move on to the combat. All right, so this is an interesting one. I'm getting kind of almost the same level of feeling that I got when I played Diablo 3 for the first time in combat. It feels fluid. It feels a little bit odd. I guess people are referring to this sort of floatiness to the combat. You can see my character here in the background. This is an in-game character. I'm not playing one of the super meta broken builds. I don't know. It's like Corruption 400 or something. And it's a Fire Song build, proc build, but it's a lot of fun to play. And I gotta say, it really surprises me to even say this, but out of all the time I've spent playing all the different characters, all the different archetypes, Blizzard Sorceress, Whirlwind Barbs, Rangers, Boazons, Javazons, Tornado Shot, Lightning Arrow, all these different things that I've played in the past. Monk, Lightning Monk. This might actually be the most enjoyable character I've ever played as far as its combat is concerned. In terms of the way they balance, the movement, the sort of moment-to-moment avoidance, the power of the skills, the feel of the abilities. Cinder Strike and Detonate Arrow are a couple of abilities I'm using here. They feel great. It just feels really fun. The way it's interweaved in there, proc-based stuff. Absolutely love it. Really, really enjoy the actual moment-to-moment combat. And this is what's keeping me locked in for a little bit longer than I thought. Now, this isn't, something that's absolutely revolutionary, but it just so happens that they really struck gold on this particular character. I favor the Ranger archetype anyway, and I feel like I could have fallen down a hole in a nasty place if I had picked the wrong character and not enjoyed it. And that's what's happened to a lot of people. A lot of people are actually trying to play some broken builds, some buggy builds, and they aren't actually fun to play. And I don't regret the decision I made at all, because I'm playing a build that I really enjoy playing. It can't perform as high of a level because it's not broken in certain ways, but it's a very fun, efficient, good performing, sensible build. And I love the combat. I absolutely love it. I love the stun mechanics on it. This game is raw and fresh, so they haven't yet come out with proc coefficients and proc rates and internal cooldowns on things like that. This thing procs on crit, and it's relentless. You can get a 100% crit chance easily. You can recover life easily. And I'm sure that won't last forever because it seems like any ARPG that comes out, they always take the approach of trying to balance the game by making the skills less enjoyable to play to a certain extent. I think you guys know where I'm getting at, including Path of Exile does this as well. But anyway, this is kind of the beauty of playing a game when it's released. You get that, as long as the build isn't straight up bugged, you get that great raw play style where no bars held. You can make it as powerful. The scaling is off the chart, really fun, and I hope to see this build live through the next patch anyway. I think it probably will. Next, we got the crafting. All right, so there's crafting in this game. You can see me starting to craft something right here. I picked up some random magic gloves, and I'm attempting right now, it just happens to be good timing in the background, I'm attempting to just make them worth something to trade. But they have a foraging potential that's very low at the start, and I will probably not pull it off because it's going to wear out before it reaches the end. Really interesting the way that you can come out with items that are clean, but they have low potential. So high determinism, low potential. And then it scales up to a point where they'll have like very low determinism, or basically everything you try to do is highly RNG based, but you will be able to make many moves. The longevity of the craft will be long there. I really like that dichotomy because you can kind of pick between, the basic items or the more advanced items or somewhere in between. And I enjoyed crafting all different variants of there and seeing if you could make it work. I think crafting ought to have a sizable RNG element to it. Now in Path of Exile, the crafting is basically you find a base and then you just keep crafting on it and spamming onto it until it finally hits what you want. I think this is better. I actually think this is better because this, for one thing, it creates an item sink in the economy. We often talk about gold sinks or currency sinks. What about item sink? It's a really great idea to be able to drop a lot of items, but then to pull those items out of the economy, and then most of the items get destroyed because they become failed crafts, but occasionally people make something that is great. More on item scarcity, I guess, moving into the trade system, where it's also solo self-found in a way. It's a mixed bag on the trade. So I'm going to talk about trade first. I play games for trade. So when Diablo 3 removed trade, that game was basically dead to me, just for the record on that note. But for trade, if you buy an item, you can't resell it. Flippers be gone. All right, so that's a lot of hideout warrior nonsense out the window right there. You can't purchase an item off trade, craft it, and then try to sell it. That's not so bad. I wouldn't mind that too much. But anyway, this game encourages you and in some sense mandates you actually play it. And as somebody who's a min-maxer, I really appreciate that because I don't like playing Path of Exile knowing that I'm being less efficient with my time by killing monsters than somebody who is not killing monsters, and somebody who just has 9 different web browsers open at once with live tabs set up and is spamming keys around like a crazy person playing a totally different game than me. And I would prefer the game set up parameters in such a way where the best thing to do in the game, the most efficient thing to do, regardless of what you're trying to do, the best thing to do is to kill monsters and get loot. That is still the best thing to do. But I like it whenever, there are other things to do. I don't spend 100% of my time doing that. And I find myself around 70-30 or 80-20. 80% of the time playing, killing monsters, getting loot. 20% of the time messing with trade and or crafting. That's a nice balance, I feel. And it could be adjusted depending on, how high your corruption is, because you have to get favor in order to actually purchase things on the trades, anyway, less player agency here. It's more restricted on how you have to play the game. So I think it's going to be kind of a flavorful thing. If that's your flavor, it's going to be great for you. If you don't like those restrictions, if you would rather be spending 80% of your time crafting and trading and 20% of the time playing, you're not going to like the game, because this game forces you to spend more time actually playing. That kind of just glazed over it, but you actually have to kill monsters to get favor as a secondary currency form to purchase things off trade. You're not just spending gold, you're spending favor as well, and that can only be gained from playing it. But you know what? That's a nice answer to some of the major core problems with games and economies like flippers, like RM tiers. So it does create a sensible solution out of that. It's a pretty creative choice there. Again, there's some creative decisions made in the game, but I don't think it's something that's otherworldly or revolutionary. It's something that blows my socks off. There is also a solo self-found mode in the game, and if there was something in here that did blow my socks off, it would be the Last Epoch's answer to the new boiling dilemma that I personally don't care about much, but a lot of people care about: solo self-found versus trade. There's a large contingent of the player base that wants to play a game like this, but they want to play it in a totally different mode. They want to play solo self-found. And then there's some who basically just want to play trade. Why not have both on the same character, in the same realm, in fact? So it can be done. This game has proven that it can be done with a prophecy faction system and then a bazaar favor trade system. You can flop back and forth between the two. There is a little bit of a penalty in a way, well, depending on the timing of your choice. And you cannot just, take the items that you get in trade and then use them in the other mode. You can't take the items that you find in the solo self-found and then use them in the trade. Not necessarily. Not if they were received from the benefits of that faction. In other words, you can't buy an item off trade and then use it in solo self-found. You can't find an item from a prophecy in solo self-found and then use it in trade mode. Why would you want to do solo self-found? Well, you find way more gear. You find way more loot. You get way more opportunities to craft. You have way more crafting materials. You get more gold, I think. And you just get way more of everything. But you'll never get as good of an in-game build as you would in trade, because you're competing with the entire player base economy has to offer at that point. So, for those who favor trade, it's there. For those who favor solo self-found, it's there. And you can feel motivated to do either one. And you can do both on the same character and the same build. Even the same day, if you want. That's pretty incredible. And I really like how they implemented the system. There maybe is a few little things I would like to have changed, like maybe not demand as much favor to do things, maybe not quite as much. But again, I could just get good and get higher corruption, and it wouldn't be as much of a problem. So there's that. You should feel motivated to play a higher level of gameplay. And to that point, that leads us to the higher level of gameplay, which is Endgame. So I just mentioned right there, I'm motivated to play higher level corruption because I get more favor, so I can actually do more trades or get more prophecies. It's not just like the Greater Rift. It's kind of like the Greater Rift system of Diablo 3, where it's an infinite scaling difficulty ability. And a lot of people don't like that. If you really hate that, you're not going to like that. I don't mind it. I don't like it for every single aspect of the game. It is nice to have certain benchmarks where you just feel like you dominate the content because you're beating the highest level of that content in that micro space or whatever. In this case, I guess it might be dungeons. But there's, anyway, I guess that's about all there would be for that. dungeon system. I know we're going to talk about it. It's nothing super special in this game. It's mostly about the monoliths, and they're kind of like the rifts or the greater rifts of the Diablo 3 anyway, or the mapping from Path of Exile. And the rewards, the favor feels like it's really good for going up higher. I don't know about the rewards though otherwise. It is interesting they've managed to make experience mean something past level 100. It's really cool how they did that, and that's mainly in the form of favor, but also in the form of respecking. So respecking is essentially free, but it costs you experience. So if you try to respect, you got to get experience again. But it's quite friendly. You don't have to spend a whole lot. And yeah, it's just interesting that, well, let's just say it's a way superior form than the Paragon system back in the day. Just put it that way. As far as like the bosses are great in the endgame. I really like the bosses. It's definitely a high point. The endgame loop is nice. People have called it a cross between like Synthesis League, I guess, and PoE mapping a little bit. Or you could think of it as the Rift system from Diablo 3. It's got a decent gameplay loop. It's got different objectives in there. It can get a little bit repetitive, but as long as you like the character you're playing, and I think that's a big thing a lot of people are overlooking. A lot of people who have been kind of crapping on the end game of I think they're suffering from non-player enjoyability syndrome or whatever. They're just not actually enjoying the character that they're on so much. But I am quite enjoying it, and maybe I'll get tired of it pretty soon after making this video. Not sure yet. But that's kind of where I'm at on the end game. I'm currently min-maxing the gear. You can see me fighting a boss right here. And, you know, there are some builds that could destroy this boss in 1 or 2 hits. My build can't do that. I actually have to do the fight. It's fun to actually do the fight, So at one point, I do prefer to play the strongest build in the game at a given time. I went into this blind, and I fell in love with the build, so I'm just keep doing the build, even though I know it's not the strongest thing out there. I'm not sure how I'll handle this moving forward in new seasons, new leagues, but at any rate, that's where we're at on there. All right, so that's going to be it for this video. That's my overall review. I'm sure there are a lot of things I didn't talk about. Let me know what you think about what I said, especially as it pertains to what this game is missing. I'm quite interested to hear the community's feedback on that. It's just something that just kind of under my skin from the very get-go. It's really hard to put your finger on it, but thought about it a lot. I think I understand what it is that I feel like this game is missing, and I really hope that the devs can somehow hear this message and take it to heart and really try to do some cool and innovative ingenuity and bring some real novelty, capture our imaginations in this game. So the bar is set high now. Games are better than they've been before, so that is a high bar to have to be hit. But, you know, in the context of a game that's not just out to make money, a game that clearly a fair bit of energy and time went into it, it's pretty obvious to me that the dev team cares about this game. They want this game to be part of that conversation of whatever the best game is in the market. And I think this game actually has the potential to be. We'll see moving forward. Very much looking forward to Last Epoch as they bring out new content and adjust the game, fix the bugs, balance the classes. We'll see what happens. That's it from me. I will see you guys in the next video. There will be more videos, by the way. More videos on Last Epoch before the new PoE season comes out. So stay tuned for that.